Well, hello, everybody. This is Veronica. I'm the hostess of this Facebook group, Child with ADHD, What Now? And today we're diving into coping skills because have you ever had a kid who's maybe just having a tantrum or a meltdown and you're sitting there thinking, I just don't know what to do? Or maybe there is some school refusal going on and the kids just really avoiding something they just don't want to do. And what do you do then? How do you help handle that too? So I think I think all those things have to do a bit with coping skills. And Janine Halloran is here. She is a licensed mental health counselor and she has phenomenal resources available on this topic of coping skills for kids and for teens. And by the way, if you go to her website, she has great printables that are so cute and so wonderful. I mean, I got the ones for the smaller kids and they're fantastic. So welcome, Janine. Pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yay. So what we're going to do is start off with when to help teach coping skills. What are they? Why are they important? And then we're going to go into 3 of the questions that you guys posted inside of this group so we can answer your questions. And I know that there will be clarity from this and that you will then be empowered to make some changes or to support your kiddos and their success in school and life. So thank you, Janine. Let's get started. Can you teach us a bit about what are coping skills? Why do we need them? When do we use them?
Absolutely. So what are coping skills? Let's start there. A coping skill is a strategy that kids and adults use to help deal with big emotions, big feelings, big, hard, challenging situations. And so sometimes I like to think about it in like sort of 2 little buckets. I think about like those healthy coping skills that we use and unhealthy coping skills that we use. So like yelling at your brother is a coping skill, but it's not healthy to like yell and like push and do all those things, right? But if you can figure out a way to use your words, to take deep breaths when you feel upset, to maybe take a break, to get a drink of water, those are some healthy coping skills that kids can use when they are having big feelings, when they are facing challenging situations. And one thing that I always like to share about when to teach coping skills, it seems sort of weird, right? But I always like to teach coping skills when kids are calm. Not when they're having a meltdown, not when they're having a big explosion or a moment. At that moment, their brain isn't online for learning. They are in fight, flight, or freeze. They are not able to take in any information. It's like the Charlie Brown teacher, like when we talk, right? So for me, it's better. And I always want to say to people, like when your child is calm, when the person is calm, that's when you introduce new strategies. So then they can hopefully recall those the next time they're having a big moment and they need some strategies that they can use. So I think about, I think about when I was a school counselor and I had a kid who was melting down. I wouldn't go in and start like trying things that they had never heard of before. I wouldn't be like, let's try 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 grounding. They'd look at me like I had 3 heads and then it would just escalate the situation. But if it's a kid I knew, and let's be honest, when I was a school counselor, I had my frequent flyers. So I'd be like, okay, so remember that thing we tried the last time, let's try that right now. Remember when you were in my office the last time, let's try that deep breathing strategy. Or at home for families, I would say, like, let's try this strategy. Like, say, for instance, let's try taking a break by reading or coloring, or maybe blowing bubbles, or taking a deep breath using a stuffy. Let's try those before when a child is calm. So when they are having a moment, then you can remind them what of those things. Now, also, when it comes to that reminder, sometimes visuals are better. Because again, when they're in that moment and the verbal isn't necessarily coming through, but having a visual is really super helpful. So I've had families put visuals on the refrigerator. I've had them put them in like a calm down space at their house, like a place that is like dedicated to keep getting people calm, which is kind of a fun thing to set up. And I like to have them, or maybe on a ring, or if they have like their own coping skills toolkit that they can pull out when they're having a hard time. So I think that kind of covers what I needed to cover. Was there something? I feel like I missed something. Did I miss something?
No, that was awesome. There's one more question that I have because some of those you said visuals, and I know you have visuals on your printables, which are awesome and available for people to print and really clear on one page and easy for me to follow, easy for kids to follow. You also have categorized coping skills into different categories. So can you explain what those were and when those might be important?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll tell you a quick story. The way that that came about was actually sort of like organic and naturally. I was sitting in a group with some preteen girls, and I had, you come out of graduate school and you have this like list of coping skills, and you're like so proud, right? You're like ready to go. And this girl turns to me and she's like, Janine, this list is too long. And I was like, that's fair. That's really fair. How do you figure out what strategies are going to work for you? So right then and there, we started dividing them up. So I think about having coping skills in 5 different styles or categories. So there's relaxation. And so that's when I really focus on like deep breathing, grounding techniques, mindfulness, all of that falls into relaxation. Distraction is about play and fun activities. And I know that seems sort of like, oh, should I be allowing my kid to do that? But play is a natural stress reliever for kids, and play gives their brains a break and helps them get out of fight, flight, or freeze and get back down to rest and digest when we give them an opportunity to play. Then there's also movement for those kids who need a lot of movement. A lot of the kids who like the movers and shakers of the world, they need to move. And that's how their body feels better. I have a mover. I have a mover and a shaker. And the way he gets out of like all his emotions is by running, jumping, swinging, turning around. He's also a sensory guy, which is another category. So he's a kind of kid who loved to like wrap up in blankets. He loves to be in a tent. He loves to be in small spaces. He would always crawl under the table when he was really little and like loved being under the table. And so those kids who really respond to sensory strategies, I love that coping style of sensory, because it really can address using your senses as a way to help yourself calm down. And so if you look in the books that I have, sensory and movement are often combined, but I like to divide them out, especially for the cards, just because it is kind of a different thing. And then the last one that I think is one of the more challenging ones, but one of the most important ones is the style of processing. So really understanding where you feel things in your body, understanding what are the things that make you have a hard time, like what are the things that are triggering for you, if you will, or the things that where you have a challenge. Like, is it really hard for you to get up in front of the classroom? Is it really hard for you to hear no? Is it really hard for you to transition? And so what can we do in those moments? How can we make a plan? That's also another one of those strategies. How can we make a plan for when you are going to experience that? Because you're going to have to transition. You're going to hear no. You're going to have to give up in front of the class one day and have to give a presentation and not be like thrilled about it. So what do you do?
Thank you for sharing. Now, let's get into some of the questions that the group members here asked. So, two people, someone who had a 6.5-year-old and a 10-year-old, both brought up this idea of co-parenting. And I'll just read one of them really quickly. This child is more likely to try coping skills when he's got me around, add dad to the mix, and things are completely different. So how to remind that these situations, or other tips, what do we do in that situation?
Gosh, I've been there, and it's really challenging, right? Because you can get your child calm, right? But then another person, another adult who like lives in the house comes in, and it makes it much more challenging. They may have personality differences. Like I know for like in my own family, my husband and my daughter are the same, my son and myself are the same. So those are the pairs that conflict. Those are the pairs that are like, it's really hard. And so one thing that I found really helpful when my kids were little and my husband and I weren't on the same page is to try and at least get in the same book. I wanted to get in the same book, and we literally read the same book. And one of the things was, it's not me saying, oh, we should do this. It's like a third party saying, why don't we try this? And so I talked with him at a time when things were calm. And actually, when we were on vacation away from everything that was going on, that was really challenging. So then I was saying, I really would love to try and figure this out because I don't think it's working. Have you noticed that it's not working? And I found this really great book. Why don't we read it and let's try and implement these strategies together? So at least we were on the same page or in the same book about that. If you don't have time to read an entire book, because I know things are busy, I would start with even just a podcast, like listening to an expert who is talking about like using some different strategies, talking out to other parenting experts, and just getting some ideas of like a strategy you can use, a way you can get on the same page about trying something new together. And then the other thing is like the person needs to also, the other person also needs to work on their own strategies. And that's, we've talked about that very openly and honestly in our house. Like we all need to work on our coping skills. We all work on different things, and we all need to work on managing our emotions in the moment. And that's really challenging. So it's about getting the two people who are co-parenting, at least you don't have to be on the same exact page, but be in the same book. I just need you in the same book.
Right, right. Also, what's sticking out to me about what you're saying is you're bringing in that proactive kind of approach, again, setting it up with a framework or at a time when it can be received. Same type of strategies you were talking about earlier a little bit.
Yes.
So another question is, I'm wondering what mantra I can use to keep my mind and stay anchored whenever my child is lashing out.
Okay, so I have a couple of different ones, and I guess it depends on like what is your reaction to their lashing out. Like, are you embarrassed? Are you feeling like you're out of control? Are you feeling like do you feel bad about yourself? Like, what is it exactly the thing that is driving that? That's an interesting sort of thing to think about, because that might actually help you create a mantra. But I will tell you the two mantras that I like to use in that situation, because I've, again, been there. It's not pretty. I've walked out of Target with a child under my arm and no groceries. So, something that I really loved, because I heard it on a podcast. You want to be the thermostat, not the thermometer. You want to set the tone. So I would say, like, I'm the thermostat. Be the thermostat. Be the thermostat in the house. Be the thermostat when you're out in the world. So you can set the tone for the environment that you're creating, and not be the thermometer that's going up and down with the environment. You don't want it, like when they escalate, you want to stay calm. You want to create the calm and be the calm for them, so they can like start taking that in, right? So there's be the thermostat, not the thermometer. And then my child is having a hard time, not giving me a hard time. You know what I mean? Like they're showing me something, that something is going on. Like I always look about, I try to, whenever a child is having a hard time, like they're like they're giving me information. Something is wrong, and I need to help them figure it out. It's not like, oh, they're trying to be like disrespectful or mean, or they're coming after me because of this. I try to take all of that out of it. I try to take off the mom hat. I try to and I try to be neutral about it. And like, what is this telling me? What are you trying to say with your behaviors? What do I need to help you figure out in this moment, so that it's not like you're not doing it on purpose. Like you're trying to figure something out. You poor dude. Like we got to figure this out together.
Awesome. Thank you. And one more question. How about when these types of behaviors change with location? So one person wrote about how their experience is very different at home versus their child's behavior like at school, and how to help with that.
So what I find interesting, I also had a child who was an angel. I mean, no horrible reports at all at school. He would come home and he would melt down. Like he would come off the bus, he would like be fine, like walking from the bus stop into the house, and then it would like explode. And that's the thing is, if they're keeping it together at school and they're coming home and they're letting it all hang out, that means that they feel safe. So first of all, keep that in mind. Like, I know it's not great. It doesn't feel great when that is happening, but it is a sign that they feel comfortable and they feel safe, and they feel like that's a place where they can sort of let things sort of be, and they can show that they are really being frustrated or overwhelmed. Or like another thing with the school, with their being good at school, it's really hard to be good at school all day long. It's really, really hard. And then you come home and you're like, I can't do it anymore. Like, and so they just let it go. It's really actually quite normal for kids to do that. It's normal for them to act in one way in one place and one way in another. Think about it as adults. We do it. when you're with your friends versus with parents of other kids versus like your family, you act differently. That's okay. Like you are more vulnerable in places where you feel more safe. And so that's what kids do too. If there's a lot of acting out at school and not at home, then I would want to get more information about what's going on at the building. Like, are there things that we can do to, like, that's when you call a meeting with the teacher. That's when you get people involved at the school and just try to get as much information as you possibly can to try and dig into it. If it's at home, then that becomes okay. So how can we set up our home environment in a way that keeps things calm, where I can continue to be that thermostat, not the thermometer. And that's where I would jump in with like doing like a feelings check-in on a regular basis. I would practice gratitude, and like at the dinner table, like getting together at dinner, talking about things that you're grateful for. And I would have a calm down space in the home so that they can get used to, okay, I am going to know that this is a place where I can go and I'm going to be able to calm myself down, and then I can re-enter the milieu. But it depends how, like, it's going to take a little bit of time and it's not going to be perfect, and that's okay. It's never perfect. But to make those baby steps towards having a place where where you're setting it up for them to have success and talking through that with them when they are calm, I think that goes a long way to sort of trying to set up a house where they feel comfortable and you feel comfortable and also in control too.
Right. As you're talking, I'm thinking of essentially the shared common language inside of that family that would develop. So like, what are the words that you would all use to identify these strategies so that you're talking on the same page or in the same book, right?
Yeah.
So, and I know that on some of your resources, you have that. So can you tell people where to get that? Because I'm sure they're interested now.
Sure. If they go to store.copingskillsforkids.com, there's actually a whole section of free resources that people can download. And then there's also the Coping Skills for Kids workbook, which has been a bestseller for a while now, and people really respond well to that. If you have teenagers, I have a teen version of that as well. And then I also have some visuals. I have printable visuals and visuals that can be shipped to you. So to make it easier so you don't have to do it.
That's all. They do make it easier. Like sometimes it's just even seeing it printed on paper, it helps add clarity that relieves stress, at least for me, right? And having those visuals, because I'm a visual thinker, right? So just being able to bring up an image to my mind as opposed to all the words that go with it helps me get there a lot faster.
Yep.
So thank you, Janine, for being here today. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
The only thing I would say is, as parents, as caregivers, we are doing a lot of work, and I want to make sure that everybody remembers to take care of themselves, even if it's for a few minutes. Even if you are hiding in the closet, eating a cheese stick and having a cup of tea, please do it, because you need to make sure that you're taking care of yourself, especially now, especially as we're going through life this way. Please take care of yourself.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.